shadows and stepped onto the set, which was decorated like a luxurious home office in a mansion. "Thanks. It felt good," she said, handing the water back to a passing PA and waving off the beauty technicians. "You look strong, regal, powerful, but," he said, drawing the one syllable out like taffy. "What happened at the end?" "Here it comes." She wasn't going to make it easy for him. She widened her eyes, feigning innocence. "What do you mean?" He pointed to the pile of dollar bills heaped on the Abusan rug. "You were supposed to tumble down to the ground and roll in the money, rub it all over your face and body. The point was to temper your strength with your femininity, but make it gritty, raw, you know?" It would have been one thing if she'd fucked up, or he'd wanted additional coverage for the scene, but he'd loved what she'd done while on her feet. He was just pissed he hadn't forced her on her knees. Dani closed her eyes and pictured herself in a Missy Elliott-type video where she grew several feet. Her head swelled like a hot air balloon, and she chomped down, biting the director's head clean off his body. How's that for temper, bitch? But when she lifted her dramatic false lashes, Amal was still standing there, head intact, smugly licking his lips, rubbing his hands together and waiting for Dani to acquiesce to his demands. The point was to temper your strength with your femininity, but make it gritty, raw, you know? Dani did know. She'd heard some version of that asinine reasoning numerous times over the past 10 years, each time she was asked to twerk while wearing a gold string bikini, pose suggestively and touch herself while half naked, or wrap her body around a pole like a member of an X-rated Cirque du Soleil troupe. However, the real reason she didn't want to go down on all fours for this video was because she was tired of having her image dictated by men. She wasn't ashamed of her sexuality. It was a part of her, and she owned it. But she was also aware that she viewed it differently than the men who controlled her career and dominated the industry did. Unwilling to simply comply, she wrapped her arms around her waist, cocked her head to the side, and allowed her curls to tumble over her shoulder and rest against the brown skin of her cleavage. Amal's dark eyes followed where she led, his Adam's apple bobbing. God, why were men allowed to rule the world? They thought they were powerful, but it didn't take much to redirect the blood flow from their brains to their dicks. Even now, without uttering a single word, she'd caused beads of sweat to form on Amal's upper lip as he stared at her. He'd do anything she asked him to do. And wasn't that true power? You keep telling yourself that, because they both knew Amal was going to get what he wanted. There was a time and an occasion for confrontation, and this wasn't it. As long as Dani's future and success was tied to the music industry, she had to play the game, and Amal was too famous for her to consider burning that bridge. Dani thought back to the time just after her grandmother had died. For as long as she could remember, it had been her and Nana. Dani didn't know her father and barely remembered her mother. Nana had raised her with a loving, firm hand until a stroke had taken her life. Dani had been devastated and terrified. She'd felt like a small tree violently uprooted by tornado-force winds from the only forest she'd ever known. What would happen to her? Where would she go? Family had stepped in, vowing to keep her out of the system. But that claim, pledged out of love and generosity, quickly deteriorated into resentment and obligation. It was while staying at her fourth home that year, with her mother's third cousin, little Jessie, his wife, and their 2 kids, that she'd seen Eve on BET. The lyrical powerhouse had been imposing, dynamic, and everything 14-year-old Dani had yearned to be. She'd been certain that if she could command respect and attention like the rapper, she could finally live her life on her terms. No more couch surfing with unenthusiastic relatives, having no say in